Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Good morning, Andy. Thank you so much for joining me on Coaching Call. I know recently you were on the Sear Show, and we definitely got into parenting and communication and all these amazing different things. But before we dive into all that, how are you today?
I am fantastic.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, it's raining a little bit here in Atlanta, but it's not dreary. Every time I can, help parents, I'm enthused and really enjoy what I do.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to get down to your childhood because as a parent, obviously you were a child at one point. So let's talk about your parents. How did they influence you? What are some of the early lessons that you learned or mistakes you made that you don't want your children to go through?
Sure. Well, we were all children at one point, but they call it parenting and not childing. So
Right.
you have to kind of morph into that role when you have kids. My childhood was really shaped in large part by my preteen years into my teen years when my parents divorced. Um, they married very young. They were very different. They grew apart. And that happens. It happens more commonly nowadays. But the biggest thing I think was my sister and I, my sister's 3 years younger, we got caught in the middle. So we got caught in the middle relating to money, relating to blame and shame, relating to just how we grew up, and it was challenging for us. And so what that turned me into was a person who needed to be pretty independent at a young age, both emotionally and financially. It led me into entrepreneurship, and frankly, before I became a parent coach, I was a very successful business entrepreneur and actually achieved Inc. 500 status with a firm that I worked with. And that gave me the financial independence. Emotionally, I just realized how important it was to be dedicated to your wife and your family, and to have that stability, because what I went through financially and what I went through emotionally as a kid changed me, somewhat for the good, but there was a lot of negative there. And so I've been very, I've been very dedicated to my wife and kids, and in different ways over time. And it's not to say that it's been easy, because it really hasn't been. And our marriages have ups and downs. And my youngest kid went through some real anxiety and depression as a teenager, which is what led me into parent coaching, because I realized that there were other parents who were going through that and needed help. And so, and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, for sure. The biggest mistake I've made as a parent was, because as a teenager, I had to get things done. I really didn't have a choice. I became a get her done kind of guy. And not everybody has that same ability. Some people struggle a little bit more emotionally. Some people don't have the skill set. Some people just need to be understood. And you got to be a little bit more patient. And that's not, that wasn't, my fastball, if you
Gotcha.
And so I learned a lot from that. I learned how to be patient and listen in the business setting, but I didn't have the right skill in the parental setting. And so I've learned how to, through my training, through my education, um, through my practice and through my learnings and through getting parent coaching myself, my wife and I, I've become a different person in that regard and able to coach others, having learned from those mistakes.
Nice. One of the things, and unfortunately, it happens way too often, where two people who are in love get married, then they get divorced. And if there's children, they use the children as pawns, as a chess game, right? They put things in front, or they pile things on the children, your dad, your mom, your whatever, and it goes back and forth. And the biggest pain that I see is on the children, not the parents, because they're not feeling that emotional. They're just almost vomiting, right? My parents were married 36 years and decided, okay, we're done. And that was a whole different ball game as well, if you will. But a lot of parents, I am divorced myself, and one of the things that my ex did not realize that whatever was between us should have stayed there. So one of the things is if I would call and if she would get foul mouth, I'd hang up the phone because my first question was, "Are the kids in the room?" She said, "Yes." I click, I'd hang up the phone. And then she didn't it took about 6 months. I guess I was training her to say, "Hey, if you wanna curse at me, you can do it all day long. I'm cool with that. But if my kids are there, I'm not cool with that." Because not that my kids are hearing her being foul to me, but they're also not seeing their mom in a great way. And for me, it was always about, "You're their mom. We're not gonna change that, and I don't want them to see a different view of you." And she didn't get that at first, and until I kept hanging up on her. And so what wound up happening is I even said, "Listen, I want the kids not to see you as this angry, nasty person. I want them to see you as mom. And whatever you and I are going through, that's cool. You wanna be angry at me, you wanna yell at me, please do it. Let it off your shoulders, but don't bring the kids into it." And unfortunately, it thank God, but it took 6 months. And unfortunately, it happens in so many different marriages that go bust, and the kids are the ones that suffer. So, are we doing justice to our kids when the person we supposedly love either betrayed us, hurt us, or anything else? And then are we taking it out on them, or are we using the kids, right? So that's just my 2 cents into that part.
Yeah. Well, 45% of families that have kids are single parent or co-parenting
Mhm.
situations.
Mhm.
So nearly half have to deal with some sort of issue where they don't have the other partner,
Right.
uh, fully aligned in one way, shape, or form. And so that affects kids in a big way. And I think what happens is, you know, going through a separation is not easy.
Mm-mm.
It hurts you financially. It hurts your ego. When things don't go well, it's easy to shame or blame or deny, as opposed to just taking accountability for your part in it. And you know, and what parents find out is it's more important for them to be right than it is to do the right thing
Yes.
for the kids,
Right.
right? And
Mhm.
and that happens not just in a separation or divorce situation. That happens when parents are parenting every day.
Mm.
They care about their values and lecturing or imposing them on their kids so their kids grow up the way that they think they should grow up,
Mhm.
as opposed to just being attuned and listening to their kids and being able to point things out and influencing their kids and letting them have their own path and supporting them on that path. Instead, it's more important that they are right. And I work with parents who don't have a good, can't talk to their children because they don't agree on certain things.
Mhm.
And those things come up time and time again. And, it could be, could be a lot of different things.
Right. Yeah.
Politics, sexual orientation, use of drugs, um,
Video
even
games and
even
so
in
forth.
some cases, it's like the musician that they like or don't like, or the ball player that they think belongs in the Hall of Fame or not belong in the Hall of Fame. Get over it. Right? It's not that important that you win. Winning
Mhm.
is having a happy and independent child.
Yeah. I'm in New York, and I know families that some are rooting for the Jets and some are rooting for the Yankees. I mean, the Giants, and then vice versa. You rooting for the Yankees or the Mets. So
Yeah.
there's that craziness that happens in the house, and when the games come on, my God, there's some arguing going on. But as long as it's healthy, I think that it's good to have that. But if it's not necessarily arguing, but more like, this is my opinion, this is how I feel about it. What are your thoughts on that? Instead of arguing, saying this is my opinion and this is who I like.
Yeah, I think it's just important to hear people and realize that it's okay to disagree and have a different point of view.
Mhm.
And if something's really bothering you that you need to get off your chest or need to get resolved, there's a proper way to do that, or a better way to do that, rather than just name calling or telling people that they're wrong, um, whether it's in front of the kids or not. It's more about, when you do this, it makes me feel like this.
Mm.
And so I'd really appreciate it if you did this instead.
Right.
Right? If you put it in that way, it comes off very differently, and you can't argue with the way somebody feels, whether you agree with it or not.
Mhm. Mhm. So when we consider children, right, as a parent, I mean, when my parents got divorced, they didn't consider us because they were in turmoil. When your parents got divorced, they didn't fully consider you and your sister as well. And when my ex-wife and I got divorced, my main concern, because I didn't want what my parents gave me. I had enough of that, right? My parents hit me, they abused me. I never wanted my kids to go through any of that. So I didn't want the arguing, the screaming, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not that guy who likes to scream at somebody and make someone else in the room feel uncomfortable. So I was
You're
never that.
pretty chill.
I am
So
pretty chill.
I think your nature
Yeah,
is not a screamer or a yeller, and I'm not that way either.
right, right.
I'm not that way either. And
But growing up with
hitting
it,
and screaming are not effective
no.
tools. They might have been more common, but they were never really effective.
Right. But my siblings are, which is kind of odd, right? Because I grew up in the same household. But when we consider, for me, it was always the buck stops here. I don't want, so for me, it's about empathy. Do I want someone else to feel horrible like I did? Or I don't even consider it. I'm like, you know what? I want my way. I want this. I want that. And it becomes more about me. Even though I do want my kids to behave a certain way, there's different ways of doing it than screaming and yelling and throwing things, right?
Empathy is a really powerful word,
Mm,
and you know, and if people had more empathy, they would be, we'd be more connected, and the world would be a better place. It's
for
just
sure.
people, people, you know, people don't really put themselves in other people's shoes to think about how could this person feel when I say this, or how
Hmm.
is this going to land, or and as humans for thousands and thousands of years, we have the back of our brain that's in fight or flight mode, where you're trying to just survive day to day with all the messages and all the things that are coming at you. And then there's the front part of your brain, which seeks satisfaction and joy. And it could be a cookie, it could be a TV show that you like. It could be talking about yourself or thinking about yourself
Mm.
as opposed to thinking about others. And so it isn't necessarily a natural thing to be empathetic. But there are some special folks who are able to do that, who, it comes natural to them, that they get their energy from, hearing about others and being able to help others.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. So that's why I have my warrior shirt on, if you can tell, right? Warrior. And I
There
like what
you
you
go.
said earlier. You said, I'd rather be a warrior than a warrior, right?
Yes.
Because I like that, because when we consider as parents, sometimes we do have to put on that warrior outfit, but sometimes we have to worry as well, right? We have to worry, is my child getting the right education even at school? Are their teachers fulfilling their roles? Because some teachers are amazing, as you and I have both had teachers who are teachers that we can easily say, wow, I'm enjoying this subject, even if it wasn't a subject that you would think you would, but the teacher made it interesting. Or am I failing this subject because the teacher never connected with me? And then we're worried about our children. So, how can we take that worry aspect and make it a positive end to how we help our children?
Yeah, I would say um, parents carry too much of the burden for their children.
Helicopter parents for sure.
And it may not, it could be helicoptering, it might not be, it just might be worrying,
Mm.
as you termed it. And here's the thing: you want kids to be happy and independent in life. When they work with others or for others, or are part of a family, when they get married or partner or whatever, they're going to have people that they don't connect with well. They're going to have
Mm.
people that they don't learn from well. They're going to have people that they don't communicate with well. And either they're going to adapt or they're going to fail.
Mm.
And if the parent is always chiming in and saying, my kid doesn't connect with this teacher, I need to change this, I need to change that, this teacher's terrible, that's not really healthy for the kid. The
Mhm.
kid needs
Mhm.
to be able to adapt. And hopefully, if you've chosen the right school or the right school system, life is a bell curve. You're going to have, 20% are fantastic and the best teachers ever, and they really connect with your kids and inspire your kids. And those are the ones they remember the rest of their lives. You're going to have 20% who are just terrible, who
Right.
just maybe should never have been teachers in the first place. And most are in the middle. And
Mhm.
you just have to learn how to survive. I know of a colleague who uh, talks about the way she parented, which was very different from me, which was really about, from day one, not putting any restrictions on your kids and not uh, micromanaging your kids and helicoptering, as you said. And the example that she gave, which is a true story, is her 3-year-old boy was standing kind of at the top of a staircase and said to the mother, I'm going to jump. Can you catch me?
Mm.
What would most parents do? Most parents would say, oh, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself and I can't catch you. Stop that.
Right.
Right? Given it was a 3-year-old, given that the parents are warriors and all the rest. Instead, what she did was she said, I'm here to catch you. Are you sure you feel safe and that you want to do that? And the child thought about it for a minute and then said, I don't think so. Maybe I'll take a couple steps down. And
Yes.
took a couple steps down and then said, hey, Mom, will you catch me now? And the mother didn't say, okay, it's safe for now, you can go, or it's still not safe. The mother said, I don't know. Do you feel like you can do it from that step at this point? What do you think? The kid had to manage the risk, and decided to take 2 more steps down, and then finally made the jump.
Mm.
So, do you think parenting like that is going to allow kids to solve their own problems and be more solution oriented than the worrying parent all the time?
Oh, without a
Probably.
doubt. Yes.
Probably. So, yeah. So, There aren't that many parents who are that good at doing that young. It's just natural to try and protect your kids when they're not mature enough to make certain decisions themselves. But that's where the foundation is set. If you're too reliant on your parents for all the answers from day one, that's what's going to happen.
It is going to happen. And you know what? As a child, we're going to fall, get hurt, we're going to scrape our knees, maybe even break things. But we can't prevent certain things, just like we can't prevent someone from having a thought, right? I can't tell you don't think that, because you're going to think it anyway. So as a parent, I agree with you that it would be best if we empower our children to be thinkers, to assess situations for themselves and come up with a solution. I think that will make a stronger person overall. And you're setting them up for success even when they're 40, 50 years old, if you start them early that way.
No doubt. And I think parents need to keep in mind that there are kind of three things that form a person. One is their genetics, in terms of the way that they are wired based upon the DNA that they were given. And sometimes that leads to predispositions to certain behaviors or patterns or things like that. And the genetics are the genetics. Second thing is the environment and societal pressures. Everything now is on. You have to be on 24/7. Being online and there's so many pressures relating to being out there. And then there's the parental communication. So if you understand all what each of those areas can contribute to be able to nurture a child, it makes a big difference. And genetics are genetics, and some things are diagnosed at certain times, but you and I grew up at a different time with different pressures and different ways of doing things, and we don't really understand because we're not in school with our kids.
Yeah. One of the things that you talked about is communication with our children. I think parents should understand even the dynamics of all of their children if they have more than one, because the way they communicate with one child may have to be different as to how we communicate with another child, right? Because one child may get it, the other one may not. Maybe they have different learning curves. And a lot of parents treat every child the same when they're individuals, right? Just the same way that you don't want to be treated the same way I'm treated, and vice versa, right? Because our understanding of things may be different. If you know how to fix a carburetor, and I don't know how to fix a carburetor, and somebody tells me, fix a carburetor, do this, and then all of a sudden I go, I'm lost. But they tell you, do that, and you go, I got it, right? So it's that communication is, how do we bridge the gap in understanding as parents about our children?
Yeah, I may disagree with you a little bit here.
Okay, go for it.
And just as a clarification, my philosophy and what works for parents and what has been studied is that a consistent approach with your kids is what provides good boundaries, good safety, and good understanding from your kids. So if you favor one kid over the other because one kid is on the autism spectrum and requires so much focus and resources, then the other kid gets left out. So you have to kind of balance, or if just one kid happens to be, better at sports or better at school or, whatever, maybe they get, treated a little bit differently. And that's not necessarily good. What you need to do is be consistent with how you treat your kids, how you communicate with your kids, so your kids don't feel like they can get away with things.
Right.
And then certainly if one of the kids needs a little bit more time or needs a little bit more support in certain areas, you have to flex according to that. They are different people. But consistency is what's so important. And what parents do is they'll struggle with their kids, or their kids are struggling. They'll read a book, they'll try and implement something, and they'll implement it wrong, or they won't stick with it. So it's not consistent, right? The struggle over the phones is so prevalent. And the reason it's a struggle is because there's not agreement in the first place. They're not clear consequences established, and they're not, and then there's no follow through on them. And right. And so that consistency is really important. And I don't want to diminish what you said, because what you said was you have to acknowledge your kids for their individuality. And I agree with that, obviously, but I think consistency in approach and consistency in follow through is really, really important.
Yeah, I never meant to say that we favor one over the other, because I have boys, I would never do that. They're 3 years apart, and they're extremely different, extremely different. But I never said, "Hey, I love you more because you like this, or I love you less." None of that. So,
It's not
for
what you
example,
say. It's not what you say.
it's
It's
how
what
you
you
say
do.
it.
It's what
Also,
you
what you
do.
do with them, right?
It's what you do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, with my kids, I always let them know how I felt, and I always gave them choices, because if we're going to go, let's say, even to the movies, and one of my sons loves this particular type of movie, and the other one absolutely does not, but we're all going to go as a family to the movies, and so what I say is, hey, we're all going to go to the movies because son A wants this, but son B wants to go to the skate park as well. So we're going to do both things, and you're both going to support one another. So this way, it doesn't say, we only went to the movies because you wanted to go to the movies, or we went to the skate park because, they're thinking of me, which for me, I love it all. But I wanted to let them know that, hey, just because you want it doesn't mean that the other one has to suffer through it. But in vice versa, you want it. The other one not necessarily has to suffer, but the other one is going to be part of it. And then you're going to be part of whatever they're doing, because we're now doing it as a family.
I
Now,
like that. I like that approach,
yeah.
giving them choices and then being able to follow through. But
Mhm.
sometimes families don't have the time or the money to
Oh,
do both
yes.
things, right?
Yes.
And
Flip a coin this
life,
time.
and in life, that's true too, right?
Yeah.
So then, then the one child needs to know, hey, I might not get my top choice this time, but next time, whenever that is, maybe I'll, then I'll get that choice whenever that is. And that's a good way to do things. And certainly if you can tie them together where it's one thing after another, that's ideal.
Yeah.
Might
So,
not always be practical,
correct. It doesn't always work out, because maybe it's
Yeah.
raining that day and we can't go to the skate park. But when I consider with my children, right? And the reason it's so easy for me to work with my own children is because I work with other people's children as a martial arts instructor. They put their kids in front of me all the time. And it's basically say, make them more confident, give them self-esteem, give them discipline, but they're coming to me for a short time. Meanwhile, this is something that has to flow into the home. And so what I do is I create a homework. So we do a superhero homework for the little ones, and it's a story, and then they have to fill in the gaps. And so it's character development. How are they thinking? What are they seeing? How will they affect their behaviors? How do they treat other people? So we go through all that. And then the other part is,
It's role
if
modeling. Yes.
oh yeah, totally. And then what winds up happening is that they have a weekly assignment sheet that they have to fill out, so that at home they're doing things as well that we do at our martial arts school. So it goes home with them. And now the parents are going, oh my gosh, what a difference I'm seeing in my child. But they're crediting it to me, But I throw it back at them and I say, it's not because of me, it's because of what you're doing at home. And the fact that one of the things that you're doing is that you're bringing them to a place that we're helping you empower them. So that's where parents go, oh, I want to keep coming here. And when their kids go, I don't want to go, the parents are like, no, you are going, because everything that happens there, we're bringing back home.
Hey, I think that's terrific. And you're playing facilitator
Yes.
and giving credit where credit is due as well, with the parents following through on it. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, for example, tell me what your thoughts. I had a mom come to me, actually, at the end of class, one of the kids comes over to me and says, are you giving out any stripes today? So they get 8 stripes before they move to the next belt. And stripes are based on knowledge. If they can do things, if they understand it. So we go through 5 different levels. Is first they learned it. Second, we showed it to them a second time. Then we detailed it for them. The other one is they're starting to understand it. And then the 5th one is they know it. And so once they meet that criteria, then they'll get a stripe on all the material in there. And so what winds up happening is this kid comes over to me and goes, Sifu, are you giving out stripes today? And I said, as much as I would like to, no one deserved one today. He goes, oh. I said, but keep training, practice at home, and I'm sure you'll get yours when you come back, right? So his mom comes over to me and she goes, did he ask you about getting a stripe? I said, yes. She goes, because I made him a promise that the next time he gets a stripe, he's going to get a treat. And as of today, I forgot what treat it is. So basically, he can get anything he wants. And I said, well, as long as he's practicing, he's doing his due diligence, and he's doing his homework and all the good stuff, and he's listening to you, then yes. And I also let the kids know that if I want to give you a stripe and you're not behaving at home and your parents tell me, there will be no stripe. And
Yeah.
the kids are like, oh, I better listen to mom or dad. And, because and I tell parents how to set up certain rules and how to get behaviors and all these things. So is it
How old is this
okay?
child? How old is this
This
child that
child
you?
is 7.
Okay.
He's 7. But
So he's
all the
old
kids
enough.
are like
He's
7,
old
8,
enough to
9.
understand.
Oh yeah. And
Using the
so
examples, building on the examples I've given before,
mm,
an approach to potentially try. I mean, your approach is good.
mm,
You're like, continue to work hard and then you'll get the rewards. Hard
right,
work is, and knowledge and being able to apply it is what gives you the rewards.
right.
But more importantly, or just as important, is, putting it in appropriate language is, what's the criteria to get, to be able to get that award.
Mm-hmm,
And do you think you've reached it, and why?
mm-hmm.
Right. And then they understand, well, I did fall short in this area, so I shouldn't have even asked, or I should understand,
Right.
what
Right.
it takes to get that award or get to that next level, or, and be able to decide based upon themselves. And then the reward should be the sense of accomplishment and the sense of
Mm-hmm.
effort, not the
Right.
treat that the mom gives them.
Right, right. And it's funny because the mom's like, I forgot what I promised him. So one of the things is I get the reward system. I get the star system. Kids, if you do for the next 7 days, if you do this, you're going to get this at the end of it, right? And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can even be a sticker. It can be. I had a couple of parents who, when their kids did not behave good, they took their reading books away, and the kids were bookworms, and the kids cried if their books were taken away. And the parent and I said, that's amazing that most kids, if you take the Xbox away, they would cry, but your kids don't even want Xbox, they want to
Okay.
read. So that
That's
was
great.
incredible. That was great parenting on their part. One of the things that I do during my class is, at the end of class, if you've done your hardest, if you didn't show up late, and it's not the kid's fault, it's the parents' fault if they come late because the kids are not driving and they're not taking Ubers, right? If they do their due diligence, if they listen to the instructors, if they do all their things, I reward one student for student of the day, and I have a prize basket. And in the prize basket, I have all types of coins, but then I also have gold coins. And then I have a slew of books, children's books, and the parents can't buy the books. Only the kids can buy the books, but it's not with money. It's with a gold coin that they accumulated from me,
Mm.
and they need to accumulate a certain amount. So they're learning how to save. They're learning how to set a goal to have something besides getting their stripes and moving to the next rank. But now they're looking at, I want to read that book. Well, how badly are you going to behave? Are you going to do your due diligence? So what winds up happening, they start collecting these gold coins, even though there's toys in there, right? A lot of them, like, they'll take a
They
toy, but
want to
then
save up for the bigger reward. Yeah.
correct. So what winds up happening is all of a sudden they'll come super happy. Sifu, I got all the gold coins. Can I buy a book? I'm like, absolutely, you can buy a book. But I
So
say the parents can't buy the books.
yeah. So you're not the parent, you're the
Right.
teacher,
Yeah.
and people's behavior is based upon the incentive, and that's the front part of the brain again.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at people who are commission-based salespeople, or their behavior is based upon getting that commission to put food on their table, right? So, and it is important to have material things that you can save for, and those things make people happy. I think just as important, and what's missing in the home, is just parents acknowledging their kids. You talked about these superhero stories. Who's the first superhero in your kid's life? It's the parents.
Oh, yeah.
And if the parents are modeling the right behavior, and they're actually rewarding effort and accomplishment and bouncing back from failure and managing through adversity, that means a lot more than anything they could ever buy. And an example of this that happens every day is the mom or the dad picks up the kid from school, and the kid's just quieting on his phone or her phone. And then the parent says, well, tell me how your day went. And the kid just wants to get back to his phone or her phone and basically says, oh, it was okay, or it was good. Right. And then the conversation ends.
That's it.
So if a parent is a little bit more curious and really cares, and the kid will see it. Tell me about your day, or tell me something good that happened. And the child may say, I got an A on my test. The parent would often say, that's great. And then the conversation ends. What should happen is the parent should say, I'm really proud of you. It looks like you really put forth some effort. I could see how hard you studied. How do you feel about that? Right. And then the kid is actually acknowledged for the effort, not just for the result.
Right.
And the child feels like the parent is listened and is proud of the child. That's the best reward you could ever give a child, is understanding and acknowledgement and support. And if the child said, I really struggled today on a test,
I got an F.
It's not, that's too bad, and then the conversation ends. It's, how do you feel about that? Are you disappointed or frustrated, or do you care? Why do you think that occurred? Is there a way that I can support you more? Right. So conversations like that are really meaningful. And if you had to start, we talked about this being about parent communication and that aspect of things. And really, if it's never too late to start. But what I suggest is that you kind of create not a path for your kid, but kind of a roadmap for how your family communicates. And some of it is just identifying your family values and having a conversation about that. Are we honest and truthful? Are we organized? Are we helpful to others? what are our values? Do we have good morals? Do we have good character? What's our conduct? Do we complain about things? Do we help each other? Do we not judge? And then, based upon those values, you can kind of create some rules in your house that you agree to. And rather than the parent setting the rules, it's actually a conversation. The parent obviously has the decision, but if there's certain rules in the house about use of technology, about uh, uh,
Hygiene.
hygiene,
Yes.
having dinner together on certain nights at the dinner
Mhm.
table, all those things, and then you kind of agree on the consequences. So
Mhm.
it's not the parent just imposing, it's actually having a discussion and the kid understanding and agreeing on the consequences, whether it's use of technology, access to friends, access to other activities, access to transportation, whether they're being driven or have use of the family car, and money.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then you create a plan. And there are a number of different things around a plan you can talk about. We just talked about some of these things, but anything from household chores to financial responsibility to academic and career goals to time management, self-care, positive communication, personal responsibility, even volunteering and community involvement. And
Mhm.
then you monitor the plan. How are we doing against those things? You meet with your children on occasion and you talk about how you're doing. Let's rate how we're doing according to some of these things on a scale of 1 to 5 or whatever it is. Where have we been successful or not successful, and what do what do we need to do better?
Mhm.
And it doesn't work just for little kids; it works for older kids, because if you have older kids who are experiencing depression and anxiety, then they could be. It leads to increased addictions, um, because their school or job may be challenging, their phone use is out of control, and the parents don't know what to do.
Mm.
And so, one of the things to do is to listen more, chunk it down, because
Mm.
kids get overwhelmed. And so, if you create um, small steps for them to take, it's more manageable, and then be supportive of them. So, I've actually worked with many parents of adult children who are having trouble launching or relaunching because they came home from COVID, and they're critical of their kids because they're not getting their act together, and in the way that they see fit.
Right.
And literally, the best thing they can do is say, okay, you want to move out of the house in a year. That's going to, what does that what do you think that requires? Well, I need to get a job and I need to save some money. Okay,
Mm.
okay, you want to get a job. That's a big step. You can't just snap your fingers and get a job. What's the first thing that you need to do in order to pursue getting a job?
Mm.
Well, I need to decide what kind of job I want to get. Well, that's a good first step. How can I help support you pursue that?
Right.
And then
Exactly.
you chunk it down and support them so that they can do things. And if you follow that flow, where you're really attuned to your kids, you're making them participate, you're still acting as the parent, but you're hearing your kids, you're letting them be responsible for the decisions and the consequences that they make. Your relationship will be very different with your children. And most parents who I work with have had trouble connecting with their kids. And they say to me, it really breaks my heart because I always want to be there for my kids. And I tell them that they can always come to me for anything that they need or any concern that they have. And then their kids don't come to them. Well, why don't their kids come to them? Because they don't feel understood. They don't feel heard. Right. And
Mm.
so that
Absolutely.
that ultimately needs to change.
You know, in you speaking about parents as heroes, and then everything else you've been talking about, I have two thoughts that came to me. One is I always tell the kids, the ones that I teach, how their parents are heroes. And I did it one time where I said to them, by the way, next, whatever class it was, I'm going to introduce you to some of the most important heroes I've ever met in my whole life. And I go, I know a lot of superheroes. They're like, really? Like, yes. So what I did is I told the parents, we're going to give you capes. You're going to put capes on. I'm going to bring the kids to a different room, and then I'm going to bring them back. And then you're all going to have your capes, and I'm going to introduce them to the most amazing superheroes. And I had the kids facing me, and then I had the parents come behind them. And then I said, all right, are you ready to meet the heroes? And they all said, yeah, yeah. They're all excited. I said, all right, turn around. And the kids loved it. The parents were overjoyed. And I said, these are the most important heroes in your life. And they were hugging it out, having a great time. But then the other
You're
thing that
super creative. You're super creative. I mean,
I just love
you're,
connecting,
most people who teach martial arts talk about discipline and learning how to do the martial arts themselves. You teach a lot of great lessons.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's about connecting, right? If we can connect on a human level and even beyond that, on a thought level, where we're almost kind of thinking like, wow, that's a great idea. Wait a minute, I had the same idea. That's awesome. So for me, the other thing that my friend Eric Donovan, he did with his family is he's always tithing. He's always giving to the community, not giving back because he didn't take away from them, but he's always giving them more than they may have. And one of the things is he's done it several years in a row where he takes his kids for a whole month to a third world country, and they go and they help build homes or anything like that. And the kids come. And the first time that he took the kids, they were young, and they're like, oh, I'm upset. I'm going to miss my friends. Da, 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 da. We're going for a whole month. It's going to be terrible. Why do I got to go help somebody? He said after the first experience, the kids are like, Dad, when are we going back? I can't wait to go back, because they made friends. Yes, none of these kids had any electronics, right? So they were helping people, whether they were building wells or homes or anything like that, or just giving to the community. So he taught his kids the most important lesson, which is empathy, to give, not back because they didn't take it away from them, but to give openly, and to just to see another person as a human being. And I love that he does that, and he's done it. His kids are now older, and they're setting up to charity events and so forth, where they're like, hey dad, we're not only going to go here, but we're going to go there. So they have now taken on the role of giving to the
Man,
community, right?
that's
It's
fantastic.
incredible.
I mean, the more you expose your kids to um, the way the world works, traveling
Mm,
around the world, um, being involved in the community and giving back, um, the more well-rounded they'll be in the choices that they make go forward. So that's amazing. I mean, I'm involved in several. I'm on a couple of nonprofit boards, and I'm involved in some things in my community, and I take my kids with me to participate in certain things. And
that's
one of
awesome.
them is a local furniture bank. Um, Collects slightly used furniture for people who are homeless who are getting back up on their
Mm,
feet. And they also have furniture builds where they have kits to build dressers and dining room tables and chairs and things like that. And I've taken my kids, and we've built furniture together. And one of the neat things when you do it is when you build a piece of furniture, you can put a little note in a Sharpie underneath, and I'll have my kids write on it, and they basically say, best wishes from someone who cares.
nice.
You know,
That's awesome. That
yeah,
really is. That really is.
yeah.
Because it gives, when we can help one another, without a doubt, it gives you that sense of, I can make a difference in this world, even if it's just for one person. And so I think charity is an amazing thing, but some people don't see charity. They see like, they can work for themselves, they can go get a job, they can do that, but they don't know what they're going through, right? Or even what mental issues they may having, or just financial issues. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe this happened. Maybe that happened. And when we can teach kids empathy to say, you know what, we have, but why don't we share what we have with other people, even if it may cost us a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think the difference is when it's not a chore.
right.
When you feel like you're getting more out of it by giving,
Mm,
your entire perspective changes and your attitude changes. And what happens is, you get more out of it and it comes back around. I'm not overly spiritual or but I believe in karma. If you're a good
mm,
person, things will, and you try and be a good person, more good will happen than bad to you.
oh,
And I've always tried to be that way, and I'm flawed, but
mm.
I try and pay, as they say, pay it forward as much as I can.
Yeah, one of the things that I this couple of weeks during the summer we do with the kids and at the martial arts school, we have theme weeks. So one week we did mustache week. The kids wore fake mustaches and all that stuff. And then we did like crazy hats. It's this week. Next week is a superhero t-shirt. And then one week we did pajama week. And then the kids come and they get to express themselves. And a lot of times kids can't express themselves because maybe they're part of a large family and they're not seen. Or one of the things that I hate the most is when people say kids are to be seen, not heard. That one drives me nuts.
There are a lot of parents to be seen, not heard,
Yes.
or people as well. So yeah, hard to disagree with anything you said there for sure.
Oh, okay. So what's the one advice that you would give parents who, especially teenagers, where sometimes we're not getting through? Listen, I both my boys were teenagers at one point. I gave them the space to be who they were, who they wanted to be. And I said, whatever actions you take, there are repercussions. Doesn't matter if it's a good thing, bad thing, whatever it happens, it's on you. I'll be there for you. But just remember, if you want guidance, I'm here. But if you just go do something dumb on your own, there is a consequence no matter what you do. I said, I will guide you, I will help you. But it's ultimately your choice. How do we communicate with teenagers when obviously they know everything?
I think it's just being consistently attuned and being curious and not judgmental.
Right.
I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just, how do you not push your agenda onto them as opposed to supporting them in their journey? And when you do that consistently, kids' behaviors change. And I get consistent results with that as long as the parents are willing to engage and willing to make the changes.
Mm.
And for my coaching service, Parents Journey Coaching, I have nearly a perfect Google review score.
Awesome.
And not unlike you, when you talked about facilitating with the superheroes, I give credit to the parents. I'm the facilitator, but they got to follow through on it and
Right.
show the commitment and desire to change. And a lot of people want to fix their kids, send them to therapy, get a tutor, blame and shame the kid. But a lot of it has to do with the way the parents have communicated. If parents are supportive and attuned from day one and allow their kids to experience some adversity as well as some success, they're much more balanced, and they have fewer issues, when they get into their teen years, because they understand how to roll with the punches and address things. And so, being able to be connected with your kid. You can't, it's just like trust. Trust is not something that's given, it's something that's earned.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so you just have to put yourself in that position. And, the same occurs in the workplace. In my prior work experience, you lose an employee, I don't understand why they didn't come to me. I always said I had an open door policy.
Right.
I don't, you know, well, what does that tell you?
Mm, mm.
Right?
Yeah, a lot of people, you're right, they have an open door policy, but it's still their way. Right? There's still room for growth. One of the things that is very intriguing to me is when parents um, push their kids in a certain direction. I know we're almost done. Push their kids in a certain direction, and their kids go in that direction, and then later on, their kids are 30, 40, and they're miserable on their life choices
Yeah,
because
that's
all
not
they were
healthy.
doing, no, all they were doing was trying to please their parents. They may
Yeah,
be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is, and it's because maybe their mom or dad were
yeah,
lawyers, doctors, whatever it is, and they were only fulfilling, or maybe their parents wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, and they're only fulfilling their parents' wishes, not their own.
yeah. I think that was more common previously in terms of vocation.
Hmm.
Nowadays, it's more behavioral,
Hmm.
but I hear your point for sure. If parents have certain expectations of their kids, want their kids to get into a specific school, you know, achieve certain things because that's what they hope for their kids, and they want their kids to have a better life than they did, they might not be helping themselves and or their kids. And one thing we've been talked about co-parenting and parents who are separated and all the rest, but and the ways to communicate with your child, but recognize that 55% of the parents are traditional,
Mm.
and you could have two good parents who have different styles, and if the parents aren't aligned with their communication with their kid, it creates resentment and confusion, and kids take advantage of that. So it's really important that parents align in their communication and talk proactively about what's important and how to address the kids, and that they support each other rather than battle each other, whether they're married or not. And
Mm.
that often gets in the way. And when parents are talk in advance, they're, you know, it's far more effective. And what they need to do is they need to realize that, you know, that sometimes they'll be in full agreement.
Mm.
Sometimes they'll need to compromise, and sometimes you have to give and take, you know,
Right.
just like the movie and the other thing, you know, the other activity you talked about, the skating. So it's parents, you know, if parents are able to do that, that makes a big difference too. And I work with parents to help them in their communication, because again, one of them wants to be right, one of them wants to be the voice, one of them might be the rescuer, while the other one's the authoritarian parent. And you know, there are authoritative parents who are the best type of parents because they're demanding yet they're sensitive and responsive.
Mm.
Then there are authoritarian parents who are demanding but tuned out,
Mm.
and they just dictate. Then
Right.
they're permissive parents who are attuned but don't follow through on anything. And then they're uninvolved parents who don't do either.
Right.
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 And the uninvolved is the worst. And you don't need two authoritative parents in a family for a family to be effective, but you need one.
Mm.
And sometimes, most of the time when I speak with parents, there aren't any of them. And
Right.
they don't have either, right? And what happens is I help get them to move in that direction so that they can be more authoritative, which, you know, which studies have shown time and time again that that's the best form.
Mm. Definitely, without a doubt. So, thank you so much for today. I really appreciate your expertise, and you're an amazing parent coach, and I think that everybody, we've put your website on going across the screen, and I think that everybody who at any point can definitely contact you and ask for advice. And I'm sure that if they're going through a situation, that you would be giving them the best advice possible. So I want to thank you for being here with me today. I really, really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And if anybody wants, I got into this business to help people, not to make the most money, because it's not the biggest money making field. It's really that it was a calling for me. And so if there's any way I can help, whether I coach or not, I'm more than willing to be an ear and to help provide resources. And if people want to email me, if they're interested, I actually have a pretty effective short quiz on whether social media is taking over your family's life or not. And if you email me at andy@parentsjourneycoaching.net, I'll send you the QR code or the link to be able to have you fill that out. And based upon the results, I'll send you the results and some recommendations so that you can leverage technology more appropriately in your family and not let it rule your family.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much. And do me a favor, everybody. I would recommend that you share this with all your friends who have kids, right? Because I think there was so many gems that were shared on this show today. And if you need to, rewatch it and hit hashtag replay. Thank you, Andy. It's always a pleasure, my friend. Have yourself an exceptional day, and I'll see you guys on the next coaching call.
Thank you, Sifu.